Elon Musk just told the world that Tesla's robotaxis will be everywhere in America by the end of this year. He said it on a stage at Davos in front of investors, journalists, and world leaders. And he said it with the kind of confidence that only Elon Musk can deliver. But there's a number Tesla doesn't want you looking at too closely. Paid robotaxi rides didn't go up last quarter. They fell by more than a third. So what's actually happening here? Is Tesla about to blow up the entire robotaxi market and leave Waymo and every other competitor scrambling to catch up? Or is this the exact same promise Musk has been making since 2019, just wearing a new coat of paint? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what Tesla is doing right now, what's actually working, what's quietly falling apart behind the scenes, and why this next 12 months might be the most important stretch in Tesla's entire history. Let's start with the promise itself, because you can't understand where Tesla is right now without understanding how many times we've been here before. Back in 2019, Elon Musk stood in front of investors and told them with total confidence that Tesla would have 1 million robotaxis on the road within a year. That didn't happen, not even close. A year later, he was still promising it was right around the corner. Then came 2021, then 2022, then 2023, each year with a new version of the same promise, dressed up differently but always just out of reach. By the time 2024 rolled around, people had genuinely stopped believing it. The joke among analysts and even some Tesla fans was that next year had become Tesla's permanent robotaxi launch date. So when Tesla actually launched a real robotaxi service in Austin, Texas, in the summer of 2025, it was a genuine surprise to a lot of people who had written the whole thing off as vaporware. That Austin launch was small, it was cautious. Tesla put a small fleet of Model Y vehicles on the road with human safety monitors sitting in the driver's seat, ready to take over if anything went wrong. It wasn't the sci-fi vision of empty cars driving themselves with nobody inside. It was closer to a heavily supervised pilot program, the kind of thing you'd expect from a company being extremely careful after years of promises it couldn't keep. But it was real. Cars were picking up paying customers. Rides were happening. And for the first time in years, Tesla had something concrete to point to instead of another slide deck. From there, the expansion started, and it started fast. Just weeks after the Austin launch, Tesla pushed into the San Francisco Bay Area, bringing robotaxi service to San Francisco itself, San Jose, and Berkeley. That was a big deal, because California is not an easy state to operate driverless vehicles in. The regulatory environment there is famously strict, and it's the same state where Waymo has spent years building out its own operation block by block, earning trust with regulators the hard way. Tesla, stepping into that arena, wasn't just an expansion, it was a statement. It said, we're not just going to operate in friendly Texas, we're going to go compete on Waymo's home turf. By November of 2025, Tesla had reached what it called full commercial service in Austin, meaning the pilot program training wheels were officially off in that city. And then 2026 arrived, and the expansion accelerated even further. In April, Tesla added Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, turning what had been a single-city experiment into a genuine multi-city network across the state of Texas. That's 4 major Texas metros running a Tesla robotaxis within about a year of the very first ride in Austin. For a company that had spent the better part of a decade promising this exact outcome and failing to deliver it, that pace of expansion was hard to ignore. Then Tesla did something that raised even more eyebrows. It crossed state lines again, this time into Florida. In the middle of July 2026, Tesla launched robotaxi service in a geofenced area of Miami. And it didn't stop there. Just days later, the company expanded into 2 more Florida cities, Tampa and Orlando, each starting with their own small, geofenced zones the same way Miami did. That's the pattern Tesla has settled into. Start small in a new city, carve out a limited zone where the self-driving system has been trained extensively on the local roads, prove it works, and then slowly expand the boundaries outward as confidence builds. It's a cautious approach, but it's also a scalable one, because it means Tesla isn't trying to solve every city's driving conditions all at once. It's solving them one geofence at a time. And the expansion doesn't stop at Florida. There's strong evidence right now that Tesla is quietly setting up shop in Charlotte, North Carolina. Photos have surfaced showing more than a dozen Tesla Cybercabs, plus a matching number of Model Y vehicles with Texas plates sitting together in a staging lot on the outskirts of the city. Around the same time, job postings appeared looking for test operators in the Charlotte area. Neither of those things is an official announcement, but together they paint a pretty clear picture. Tesla is preparing to launch there, and what makes Charlotte particularly interesting is that Waymo has already been testing in that exact city for months. If Tesla launches there, Charlotte instantly becomes one of the first real head-to-head battlegrounds between the two companies, in a market neither one has fully claimed yet. Whoever gets there first, and whoever performs better once they arrive could set the tone for how this rivalry plays out in the next wave of cities. So just from a pure geography standpoint, the story is genuinely impressive. In roughly a year, Tesla went from a single cautious pilot in one Texas city to an active or emerging presence across Texas, California, and Florida, with signs pointing toward north. Carolina next. Tesla itself has said the goal is to have unsupervised full self-driving or robotaxi service operating in roughly a dozen U.S. states by the end of 2026. If you're just looking at the map, it genuinely looks like Tesla is executing on the vision Musk has been talking about for years. But geography is only half the story, and honestly, it might not even be the most important half. The bigger technical milestone happened not in how many cities Tesla is in, but in what's actually sitting in the driver's seat, or rather, what isn't. The real milestone, the one that autonomous vehicle companies live and die by, is removing that human completely and trusting the software to handle everything on its own, with real passengers in the back seat and nobody up front at all. Tesla crossed that line in Austin. The company began offering rides with no safety monitor in the vehicle whatsoever. Musk posted about it himself, and it put Tesla in a very specific, very small club. Up until that point, the company's actually running fully driverless commercial rides in the United States, where basically just Waymo and Amazon's Zoox. That's it. That was the entire club. Cruise, which was General Motors' Robotaxi division, had already been shut down after a string of accidents and a regulatory crackdown in California. So when Tesla removed the safety monitor and started running truly driverless rides, it wasn't just a nice milestone, it was Tesla stepping into the only tier of the market that actually matters long term. Supervised robotaxis are a demo. Unsupervised robotaxis are a business. This is also where Musk made his boldest claim yet, the one that opened this video. Standing on a stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, in January of 2026, Musk told the audience that Tesla's robotaxi network would be, in his words, very widespread across the United States by the end of the year. Not just present in a handful of cities, widespread. That's a massive claim, and if you know Musk's track record with timelines, you probably already have a healthy amount of skepticism built in, and you'd be right to. Because here's the thing about Musk's history with this exact promise. In 2019, he said robotaxis were basically a year away. They weren't. In July of 2025, right around when the Austin pilot was just getting started, he predicted that autonomous ride-hailing would reach half the population of the United States by the end of that year. That didn't happen either. Not even close. Even within the Austin program itself, back in October of 2025, Musk said Tesla should have 500 robotaxis running in that one city alone by the end of the year. A month later, in November, he quietly revised that number down to about 60. And even now, months after that, Tesla is reportedly still only running somewhere between 30 and 50 vehicles in Austin. So when you hear widespread by the end of 2026, it's worth remembering that widespread from Musk has meant wildly different things depending on which month you asked him. That doesn't mean the progress isn't real. It clearly is. But there's a pattern worth holding on to for the rest of this story. Tesla is genuinely making progress, faster than a lot of skeptics expected. But Musk's public predictions about the pace of that progress have consistently overshot reality by a wide margin. Both things can be true at once, and understanding that tension is key to understanding everything else happening with this program right now. Now let's talk about what's actually happening under the hood, because this is where things get genuinely interesting from a technology standpoint, separate from all the marketing and the timelines. During Tesla's second quarter earnings call this year, executives dropped a detail that a lot of people missed. The robotaxi fleet, the actual vehicles out on the road picking up paying customers right now, are already running early builds of the next generation self-driving software, known as version 15. This matters because version 15 isn't a minor update. According to Tesla's own AI leadership, the goal with version 15 was to make major improvements across 7 different tracks compared to the previous version, and those tracks are all being developed and tested in parallel rather than one at a time. Even the early builds currently running in the robotaxi fleet are already delivering something like 40% of those planned improvements, according to Tesla's internal benchmarks. And the full public release of version 15 is expected to bring roughly 10 times more parameters than the current software, which in plain terms means a much larger, much more capable neural network doing the driving. Think about what that actually means in practice. Tesla is using its paying robotaxi customers, real people in real traffic, as the live testing ground for its most advanced self-driving software before that software ever reaches the broader consumer fleet of personally owned Teslas. That's a pretty aggressive strategy. It means the robotaxi program isn't just a business line, it's also functioning as Tesla's most valuable data collection and validation tool for the entire self-driving program. Every mile those robotaxis drive isn't just generating ride revenue, It's training and proving out software that will eventually ship to millions of personal vehicles. And Tesla is not shy about touting the safety numbers that have come out of this. According to Tesla's vice president of AI, the Robotaxi fleet had driven more than 380,000 miles in fully unsupervised mode across 6 different cities and 2 states, with what he described as an impeccable safety record. He specifically said there had been 0 notable incidents, and that any issues that did occur involved other drivers or other actors affecting the Tesla vehicles while they were stationary, not the other way around. On the surface, that's an extremely strong claim. 0 notable incidents across nearly 400,000 miles of driverless operation is the kind of statistic that, if it holds up, would be a genuine turning point for public trust in the technology. But here's where we need to slow down and look a little closer, because the full picture is more complicated than that headline number suggests. First, notice the phrase 0 notable incidents. Notable is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and Tesla's own executives did not clearly define what counts as notable and what doesn't. That's not necessarily dishonest. Companies use judgment calls like this all the time, but it does mean the headline statistic is somewhat squishy. It's Tesla's own internal classification, not an independent third-party audit. Second, and this is the part that got a lot less attention when it came out, Tesla has actually reported 22 crashes involving its Robotaxi fleet to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration over the roughly 1-year period since the program started trial operations. Now, to be fair, most of those 22 incidents involved other vehicles, crashing into the Tesla Robotaxis, not the other way around. That's an important distinction, and it's genuinely common in the self-driving world, where autonomous vehicles often get rear-ended or sideswiped by human drivers who aren't used to sharing the road with them. So a lot of those 22 crashes may not reflect poorly on Tesla's software at all, but not all of them fall into that category. Buried in that same report were 3 separate crashes that were actually caused by Tesla's own teleoperators, the remote human operators who can take control of a robotaxi from a control center when the car gets stuck or confused. Those 3 incidents happened while a human, remotely, was the one actually driving the car, not the AI. There were also multiple reports of the vehicles hitting stationary objects at low speeds, things like curbs, utility poles, and in one case, the bed of a tow truck. None of these are catastrophic, high-speed, headline-grabbing accidents, but they do complicate the clean narrative of an AI system with a flawless safety record, because at least some of these incidents happened specifically when a human was in control remotely, and others were the kind of low-speed judgment errors that suggest the system, or the humans backing it up, still have real limitations. Operating anywhere in the world today includes a layer of remote human support. When a car gets confused, stuck, or encounters a situation it doesn't know how to handle, it can call out to a human teleoperator sitting at a computer somewhere, who can either give the car guidance or, in some cases, take direct remote control and drive it out of the situation. This is a completely normal part of how these systems are built today. Waymo has similar remote assistance capabilities, and it's not necessarily a red flag on its own, but it does mean that when Tesla talks about unsupervised miles, that phrase describes the absence of a human physically inside the car, not necessarily the complete absence of human involvement in every single ride. Now let's talk about the number that really should have made headlines but mostly didn't, the one I mentioned right at the start of this video. Despite all of this expansion, despite adding new cities in Texas and Florida, despite the safety monitor removal, despite the version 15 rollout, the actual number of paid robotaxi miles that Tesla's fleet drove fell by 36% in the second quarter of this year, according to Tesla's own reported figures. Let that sink in for a second. The company was expanding into more cities than ever before, and the amount of paying customer activity on the platform still went down by more than a third. How do you square that with everything else we just talked about? There are a few possible explanations, and probably the truth is some combination of all of them. One possibility is that new city launches take time to ramp up. When Tesla enters Tampa or Orlando or Charlotte, it starts with a tiny geo-fenced area and a small number of vehicles, which means those new markets aren't contributing much ride volume in their first few months, even while they're technically live. Another possibility is that Tesla actually pulled back ride activity in its more established markets, maybe deliberately, to focus engineering and operational resources on rolling out version 15, and expanding the geographic footprint rather than maximizing rides in the cities it already had. It's also possible that public trust and demand simply softened a bit, especially with crash reports and safety questions circulating in the news at the same time. Tesla hasn't given a detailed public explanation for the drop, which means, for now, we're left connecting the dots ourselves. What this tells you is that Tesla's Robotaxi story right now is really 2 different stories happening at once. And depending on which one you focus on, you'll walk away with a completely different impression of the company. Story number one is the growth story. New cities, removed safety monitors, next generation software already live in the fleet, hundreds of thousands of unsupervised miles logged, and a CEO promising nationwide presence by year's end. That's the story that makes headlines and moves the stock price. Story number two is the friction story. Paid ride volume falling by more than a third, 22 reported crashes, including ones caused by remote human operators, a fleet in Austin still a tenth the size Musk promised less than a year ago, and missed deadlines stretching back 7 years. That's the story buried in earnings calls and NHTSA filings. Both of these stories are true simultaneously, and that's honestly the most accurate way to describe where Tesla's robotaxi business sits right now. It's not a scam, and it's not vaporware anymore. The cars are real. They're on the road, and people are riding in them every single day across multiple states. But it's also not the flawless, unstoppable, market-dominating machine that some of the more excited headlines want you to believe either. And that brings us to the competition, because Tesla is not operating in a vacuum here. Waymo, which is owned by Google's parent company Alphabet, has been quietly building its robotaxi network for far longer than Tesla has, and with a very different philosophy. Waymo relies heavily on expensive sensor arrays, including LiDAR, radar, and multiple cameras working together, whereas Tesla has famously bet everything on a camera-only approach, arguing that if humans can drive using just their eyes, cars should eventually be able to do the same using just cameras and a powerful enough neural network. Waymo currently operates in 5 different US markets, and it has done so with a level of caution and gradual trust. Building that has made it so far the most established and widely respected name in the space. Then there's Amazon's Zoox, which is a smaller player but has also been running genuinely driverless rides without safety monitors, putting it in that same small club Tesla just joined. The interesting thing about the current moment is that all 3 of these companies, Tesla, Waymo, and Zoox, are converging on the same handful of cities at roughly the same time. Charlotte is a great example. Waymo has been quietly testing there for months, building relationships with local regulators and mapping the roads block by block, the same patient approach that's become their trademark. Now, Tesla appears to be moving in right behind them, staging over a dozen vehicles and hiring test operators in the same city. If both companies eventually launch full commercial service there, Charlotte becomes a genuine test case for which approach wins when they're forced to compete head-to-head in the exact same environment, rather than each company picking its own separate cities to avoid direct comparison. That competitive pressure might actually explain part of why Tesla is moving so fast on geographic expansion right now, even while the ride volume numbers look shaky. In a market this new, being first matters. Grabbing territory, establishing brand presence, and getting your name attached to a city before a competitor does can be worth more in the long run than optimizing ride volume in your existing markets. It's a land grab strategy, and land grab strategies often come with messy short-term numbers in exchange for long-term positioning. That doesn't excuse the crash reports or the missed timelines, but it does offer a plausible business logic behind why Tesla would keep expanding into new cities even while its existing ride volume is falling. There's one more piece of this puzzle worth understanding, and it's happening away from the robotaxi headlines entirely in Tesla's approach to its personal vehicle self-driving software. Earlier this year, Tesla made a significant change to how it sells its full self-driving software to regular customers. For years, buyers could pay a one-time fee to unlock the feature permanently, a fee that at its peak cost as much as $15,000 and had more recently dropped to around $8,000. In February of this year, Tesla largely eliminated that one-time purchase option and shifted to a subscription-only model, charging $99 a month in the United States instead. At the time, this move raised eyebrows and plenty of skepticism, with critics wondering whether it was simply a way to squeeze more recurring revenue out of existing customers. But when you look at it alongside everything happening with the robotaxi program, the subscription shift starts to make a lot more strategic sense. If Tesla's long-term vision really is a future where personally owned vehicles can generate income for their owners by operating as robotaxis when they are not being used, then a subscription model fits. That vision far better than a one-time purchase ever could. It keeps every vehicle continuously connected to Tesla's latest software, continuously contributing data back to the company, and continuously part of the ecosystem that the robotaxi network depends on. It's a subtle shift, but it signals that Tesla isn't just building a separate robotaxi fleet on the side. It's trying to architect its entire vehicle lineup, personal cars included, around an eventual future where the line between a private car and a robotaxi becomes blurry or disappears altogether. So, pulling all of this together, where does that actually leave us? Tesla has undeniably crossed real milestones this year. Removing the safety monitor and running genuinely driverless rides puts the company in a tier that, until very recently, only Waymo and Zoox occupied. expanding from one city to a presence across 3 states, with a 4th likely on the way in about a year, is a legitimately fast pace of growth by any standard. And having next-generation software already running in the live fleet, months ahead of its public consumer release, shows real engineering momentum behind the scenes. But the claim that Tesla is about to blow up the entire robotaxi market and leave everyone else behind is, at best, premature. The fleet size in Tesla's most established market is still a small fraction of what Musk promised less than a year ago. Paid ride volume is heading in the wrong direction, even as the map expands. Crash reports, including ones directly tied to human teleoperators rather than the AI itself, complicate the clean safety narrative Tesla wants to tell. And Musk's own history with timelines gives every reasonable person a solid basis for treating the widespread by the end of 2026 promise, with a healthy dose of caution rather than blind faith. What we're really watching right now isn't a market getting blown up in some dramatic single moment. It's a slower, messier, more human process of a genuinely new technology trying to scale in the real world, with all the setbacks and course corrections that come with that. Tesla is making real progress. It's also still working through real problems. Both of those facts sit side by side, and the next 12 months, the exact window Musk has staked his widespread promise on, will tell us a lot more than any single earnings call or Davos soundbite ever could. Whether Tesla actually delivers on that promise, or whether this becomes just another entry in a very long list of missed deadlines, is genuinely one of the more fascinating open questions in the entire tech industry right now. There's also a bigger question sitting underneath all of this, one that goes beyond Tesla specifically. Every time a new autonomous vehicle company hits a milestone like removing the safety monitor, or crosses into a new state, or logs its first 100,000 miles without a serious incident, it chips away a little more at public hesitation around the entire category of self-driving cars. That matters for Tesla, but it also matters for Waymo, for Zoox, and for whichever companies come after them. A crash involving any one of these companies tends to generate outsized headlines and outsized fear, while hundreds of thousands of routine, uneventful miles rarely make the news at all. That asymmetry means the whole industry is walking a tightrope right now, where a single bad incident could set public trust back by years, even if the underlying technology keeps improving every single month. So as you watch this story continue to unfold over the coming months, keep an eye on a few specific things, rather than just the headlines. Watch whether Tesla actually grows the Austin fleet closer to the hundreds of vehicles Musk once promised, or whether that number stays stuck in the double digits. Watch whether paid ride volume recovers now that new cities have had time to ramp up, or whether that 36% drop turns into a longer trend. Watch how many additional states actually get added before the end of the year, and whether Charlotte becomes the head-to-head battleground with Waymo it looks like it's shaping up to be. And watch whether version 15, once it fully rolls out, delivers the leap in capability Tesla's own engineers say it's built for. Those are the real signals that will tell us whether this was the moment Tesla genuinely changed the robotaxi market, or just another chapter in a promise 7 years in the making. And whichever way it goes, you can be sure we'll be right here breaking it down for you the moment it happens.